Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I hope that you're well. It's Rabbi Akiva Males, and today is Wednesday. It is the 3rd of September, and we are getting ready for Parshas Ki Setze. And I'm going to share some sources today. Some of them you may be familiar with, some of them you may not be. Hopefully, this will make our Parsha a little bit more meaningful. So let's see. We're going to start today with something that I saw in the Aznaim Torah from Rav Saratskin, and it's right on the first pasuk in the Parsha. The pasuk begins, it says, Ki Setze milchama al oivecha, when you go out, or if you go out to war against your enemies, and the Lord your God will deliver the enemy into your hands, and you'll take captives. So I saw that Rav Saratskin makes a very astute observation right at the beginning of the parsha. Notice how the parsha begins. It says Ki Setze. That's the name of the parsha. Ki Setze. When you go out for war. So he says as follows: Ki Setze melchama lamdecha Torah tachsise melchama. In a very subtle way, the Torah is teaching us an extremely important strategy of war. She'im yesh lecha nehel melchama, if war is necessary, if the Jewish people ever does need to wage war, az tishtadel lenahelosa al admas ha'ayev o b'makom hefker. Be sure to wage that war either on enemy's territory or in no man's land. Don't wage the war in your own land, in your own cities. And he says, look what the pasuk says. The pasuk says, Ki seitze lamelcha, when you go out to war. War should never be waged on your own land. It's destructive. It is harmful. We've seen pictures throughout history, especially modern warfare, what it does to locales, what it does to cities, what it does to areas that have been built up and developed. It's destructive. That's the purpose of war, is to destroy. It should not be waged on your own turf because you don't want to incur the damages and the losses that'll result. Don't wait until the enemy comes to you and wage war, and now you have to wage war in your own locale, in your own cities, in your own built-up areas, on your own land. Because then by the time you win, you'll have to destroy your own places, your own cities. You don't want to experience that. Take the fight to the enemy. In a certain sense, it's saying be preemptive. I never really noticed that. That's a very subtle point that Rav Saratskin picks up on at the beginning of the parsha. Kisei, when you go out, the Torah is telling us that's how war should be fought. It should be fought by us going out. We should never wait until the enemy is at our gates and in our own locale to fight that battle. Because if we would do that, then we would end up destroying too much of our own areas and our own land developed areas as well. Thought that was a very astute observation. All right, let's move on to the second point. The second point I thought was also fascinating, and this comes from Rav Saratskin as well. Rav Saratskin here is going on the mitzvah, the very unique mitzvah of Shiluach HaKain. Shiluach HaKain is the mitzvah that shows up in this week's Parsha, and it has to do with sending away the mother bird. And let's see the psukim. Ki yikarei kan tzipor lefanecha. If you chance upon a bird's nest before you, baderach, when you're walking on the road, b'chol eitz, al aretz, whether it's in a tree or whether it's on the ground, efrochim, and what's in the nest? Either little fledglings, obeitzim, or they're still not hatched or eggs. Va'im rovetzes ala efrochim, all abeitzim, and the mother bird is perched on top of those fledglings or on top of the eggs. Lo sikacha em al banim. Don't take the mother away from the children, or don't take them together, both the mother and the kids. Rather, shalech to shalach esaim, send away the mother, vesabanim tikachlach, and then you could take the eggs, or then you could take the fledglings, but don't take them while the mother's still there watching it. And if we do this, God will be good to us and we'll have lengthy days. So here's a special havtacha. There's a special guarantee here for a length of days, for longevity, if we fulfill this mitzvah of Shiluach HaKain. And that's why to this day, there are people who really look for the opportunity to fulfill the mitzvah of Shiluach HaKain, because here's the Torah offering a guarantee of longevity. I'm reminded of a couple of times when Layla and I lived in Harrisburg. There were two times that I remember an opportunity for Shiluach HaKain came our way. One of them we couldn't do. That we lived right by a river. It was about a block away from our house was the Susquehanna River. And one day we noticed in our backyard, right in the greenery, there was a duck. A duck had built a nest, and a duck was sitting on a whole bunch of eggs. And I guess we could have fulfilled the mitzvah Shuluch HaKain, but first of all, ducks it's kind of it could get a little protective and violent over its eggs. I don't want to do that, but also I didn't know for 100%. Could I be certain this was a kosher? It's only with a kosher bird. Can I be certain? But also, there's a machlokas amongst the poskim. If you really don't need the eggs, or you're not planning to eat them, is it right to put the mother through this to send it away? So we didn't do it, but every day we would come out and check. And sure enough, one day I came out there and the mother and all the eggs were gone. There was a bunch of shells, broken shells and feathers left there. They had hatched and she marched them off, in a row of ducklings. The mother duck must have marched them off to the river, but we missed that. We saw everything that led up to it. There was another time though that there was a bird that had built a nest right on top of our fence there that we had the opportunity to perform the mitzvah of Shuluch HaKain. So it's a fascinating mitzvah. All right, be that as it may, that's the mitzvah. Before taking the young, before taking the eggs or the fledglings, we want to send away the mother. That's what the Torah tells us. And you'll find commentaries will write about this. There's so much about how to fulfill this mitzvah and what might be the underlying principles behind it. Let's take a look at Rav Sorotzkin because he raises a point that I have never seen before. So let's see, I'm on page 2. Ki karei kan sipor, if you chance upon a bird's nest, he says, Nifla hadavar. There's something astonishing about this. And again, I never thought or noticed this before. Nifla hadavar, there's something astonishing. Shebechol makom, throughout the Torah, chaya va'of, we always classify together chaya are non-domesticated animals. So let's say like a deer, something like that. Va'of and birds. She'enam al pirov misurim bidei adam. Because again, birds for the most part, except for like chickens, something that's domesticated, for the most part, birds are not something they're also pretty wild. They're depending on themselves. It's not something that, we're cultivating and raising. So for the most part, the Torah always groups together chayos and ophos. And he's going to give some example. There are so many halachas that are the same. Shavim, they're always grouped together. K'mol inyan kisoy adam. First of all, there's kisoy adam, the special mitzvah that if you slaughter a kosher chaya, before koshering the meat and eating the meat, you're supposed to cover up the blood with dirt. That's also true of an oaf, of a bird. It does not apply to a behemoth, to a domesticated animal. So if someone slaughters a sheep or a cow, that's a behemoth. That does not need kisoy adam. The blood does not need to be covered up. But only by chayos and ophos is that true. Another idea, ulinin chelbam shumat mutar. There's no such thing as forbidden fats when it comes to chayos and ophos. When it comes to behema, there's a whole region of forbidden fats that we can't eat. But when it comes to chayos, non-domesticated animals, let's say again, like the deer, gazelle, something like that, there's no fats that are off limits. And same too when it comes to ophos, kosher birds, there's no fats that are off limits. So we see that they're grouped together. The Khan, but here by this mitzvah shluach hakein, then mitzvah shluach hakein hema cheluken. They are different. The mitzvah of shluach hakein only applies to an oaf, does not apply to a chaya. Ve'ena nohages ela ba'ofos. It only applies to birds. V'lo b'chaya, not by, let's say, non-domesticated animals. Im ninsa ayala or tzviya. Let's say you would find a mother gazelle or a mother deer, yosheves al banei aktanim, that's sitting and nurturing its newborn little children. Rishaim anu lekachas esaim al banim. We're allowed to take the mother away from the kids or the kids away from the mother. We're allowed to do it. So how do we understand that? Why might it be that the Torah specifically only has this mitzvah of shiluach hakein when it comes to birds? We don't have such a mitzvah of this, resembling this when it comes to chayos. Yet in so many other areas of halacha, there's no difference between chayos and ophos. What an interesting question. I have not seen this raised before. So let's see what he does with this. He says, V'yesh lomer, here's his theory. Shemina ophos, when it comes to birds, mishuna mikola chayva behema. There's something unique about birds that's different than all domesticated and non-domesticated animals. Asher bara Hashem b'olam hazeh. On God's green earth, you only see this phenomenon when it comes to birds. What is that? It says as follows. Shehem matilim beitzin, they lay these eggs, v'rovtzim aleim, and they sit on those eggs. They nurture them, Zman Yadua, for a good period of time, Ad sheyotzim henafrochim, until the fledglings emerge. Masha enkin b'shar ba'alei chayim. There's no other creature that does this, that shows that kind of love and concern and that devotion for its young. It's just birds that do that. You don't find insects, they lay eggs. You'll find other things. Turtles, they lay eggs, sea turtles, they lay eggs, and then they leave. There's no other creature other than birds that do this, that nurture those eggs. Shehem yoldim b'dmusam ba'alei chayim mamash. Every other creature, as soon as the creature is born, it's just a miniature version. Elephant gives birth to a little elephant. Giraffes give birth to little giraffes. Cows to little cows. It's only, and again, even other creatures that do give birth to something in an egg, they don't stay and nurture it. It's just birds that do that. Birds give birth to something that's in an egg, and then they nurture it. And because it's so different, God seems to have implanted into birds an incredible amount of care, concern, and love for its offspring. They can't even see it. They don't see a warm little snuggly miniature version of itself. All they see is an egg, and the egg has this hard shell on it. They can't even see what's inside of it. God put some kind of love. It made it natural inside of birds that even though all they see is this egg, they can't detect, they can't feel a warm little fuzzy creature. Davar she'en bo ruach chayim. It doesn't. It's not something that's pulsating with life. They can't feel the life there. V'gam ein bo shum dimyon lof, and there's nothing about it that appears to its eye to say, "Oh, I recognize that. That's a mini version of me." It doesn't. They're seeing a shell. Afal pikein ha'of. Despite all that, the mother bird im moseres as nafsha ala beitzim. She will give of herself. She'll really sacrifice herself to stay and sit on those eggs. V'yoshevas kama shavuot, and will sit for several weeks, kamat, below achila, with a minimal amount of eating, ushatia, and drinking, umechamemes osan, and she sits on those eggs to keep them warm with her body heat, below hefsek, without any interruption, ad sheyeh zocha liros lefrochim b'dmusa, until they finally hatch and she sees the fledglings. It's unbelievable, the concern, the care that a mama bird shows for that. You don't see this in any other form of nature. Yeah, you might find that other creatures, the mothers take care of their offspring, but you might explain that because there's something she recognizes. She sees a mini version of her species there. And the ones who do lay eggs, like again, like some type of reptiles and some type of turtles and other things, they just leave them there. They don't stay and nurture them. A bird is so unique. It stays and nurtures this egg, even though there's nothing about it that resembles itself. Lefika, therefore, because it's got this intense amount of love for its offspring, God just seems to have implanted it in mama birds. That's why they show that devotion. Lefikach, tsara gadol meod. It has a great deal of pain. Birosa shalochim imena sadavar. If the mother bird were to see you taking away its eggs, taking away its fledglings, it would cause that mother bird so much pain because it was obviously implanted. It was obviously given this incredible amount of love, infused this incredible amount of love and care and concern and nurturing for its offspring. If you were to now take them away, it would cause a greater pain to the bird than it would to any other creature. She masras nafshallah, because it really did an incredible amount of self-sacrifice to nurture those eggs. Ulafia ava shenata Hashem ba, because of that natural love that God inserted into birds to take care of its offspring, because otherwise it wouldn't do it. Why else would a mother do that? Sit on top of those eggs. She doesn't recognize it as even being her species. She sits on top of them and really so much self-sacrifice. It's because God inserted that amount of love for its offspring inside it. So because there's so much love, the other side of that coin is gadol atzar. There would be so much pain im tira barasam if she were to see us harm them, take them away, take away those eggs. That would cause her so much pain. Hello, tiresh chazra Torah beis pamim beParshas ala frochim al beitzim. Because here the Torah emphasizes twice that the Torah says that if you see the mother sitting on the frochim, either on the fledglings or on the eggs, lashmiya, it's trying to drive home this point. Shemeshuna avas hatzipur l'toldasa. It's very different. All other creatures that are out there, yes, there's the mama bear instinct. The mother loves its offspring, but that love is so much greater when it comes to birds. Mishar ba'alei chaim, it's greater than all other creatures. Shahatzipur. Top of the next column, Moseres Esnaf Shafilu B'Shash Toldoseh Einum Kiel because it's so unique that the mother really is involved with a great degree of self-sacrifice, even when its offspring don't even resemble her. It's just this round, hard object, and yet she's incredibly given to it. Ratzalomer bebechinas beitzim, when it's looking like an egg, it doesn't even resemble the species. The FLP now, so he says, therefore, so his theory is, Rav Sorotskin's theory is, that's why he started off with a question. Why is it in so many areas of halacha, chayos and ophos, undomesticated animals, and birds are grouped together? Why is it here when it comes to the mitzvah of Shiluach HaKain? This is unique just to birds. So he's saying, you know why it's unique to birds? Because the mitzvah of Shiluach HaKain is showing a great amount of rachmanos to the mother bird, and that's the one creature in God's green earth that needs that rachmanos, because it has instinctually, it has so much devotion to its offspring. Because otherwise, why would it say and stay and nurture them like that? In order to offset, so to in other words, it would just punish it it would beat it to death to see it take away its eggs and take away its fledglings. So because God inserted in that bird so much rachmim, so much care and concern for its offspring, so therefore that's why this is the one creature that the mitzvah of Shluach HaKen was given to. No other animal, no other creature was this mitzvah given to, and that's to compensate for that feeling of rachmanis that the mother has for the birds. It's a beautiful idea. I've never seen this before. Now, what Rav Sorotskin is bothered by is as follows. The Gemara tells us in both in Brachos and in Megillah that we're not supposed to ascribe the reason for Shiluach HaKain. It has to do with rachamim, it has to do with mercy. So he goes, what do you mean? I just gave this beautiful theory, and so much of it revolves around that. So what do I do with this teaching of Chazal that say we're not supposed to ascribe it to that? So let's see what he does. He says, V'yafal pi shamru Chazal, and even though our sages taught us, bebrachos, in the tractate Brachos, Megillah, in the tractate Megillah, he tells you where to find it. Ha'omer, someone who says, Al kan sipur yagiu rachamecha, if let's say someone in the middle of their davening, they want to throw in and say, God, you are so merciful that even on a bird's nest, your mercy was extended to. If someone were to say that in their davening, meaning that they're ascribing that the whole basis for the mitzvah of Shluach HaKain is all about God's mercy that He's trying to have on the mother bird, Meshaskin, we silence him. In other words, that's not appropriate to say. We don't say something like that. That the entirety of this mitzvah is all based on God's compassion for the mother bird. So what do I do with that? I just gave this beautiful pshat. Sorotskin's bothered by. I just gave this beautiful pshat about what's unique about birds, that this mitzvah shluach HaKain only applies to birds, doesn't apply to any other creature, especially when we know that so often the Torah groups chayos and ophos together. But what about this idea that we're not supposed to ascribe the mitzvah to rachamim? So he says, She'ein zu dafka mitam rachmanus, el gezeres hamelch malchei hamelch ma'akadosh baruch hu. What Chazal meant is that there's more going on here. Yes, there's an element of Rahmanos, but there's more to it than that. There's things we don't understand about this mitzvah. There are elements of this mitzvah, the reasons, the tamei mitzvahs behind this, that we don't fully understand. And what the Gemara meant, what the Mishnah meant, what Chazal meant, when they said if a person would say that phrase, Al kan tzipori agiu rachamecha, what they're trying to say is the entirety, the entire reason of this mitzvah, it's all predicated on Rahmanos. That's something that Chazal said it's inappropriate to say because there's we don't fully know all the cosmic reasons why God gave us all the mitzvahs that we have. So there might be more to this mitzvah. So we should never say with such certainty that that's what this is totally about. That's what Chazal meant to say. Zerak Omer came to tfilaso. Chazal were against the person saying this in their tefillah, because when we daven, it's like we're saying it with absolute certainty, and we have this concept of vidover shkarim lo yechaven l'neged, that God says when we speak to God in tefillah, there can't be any sheker, there can't be any falseness involved. So yes, so he says when Chazal say that you're not allowed to say it's all based on Rahmanos, that's talking about throwing it into tefillah, inserting that into tefillah, where tefillah has to be 100% emes. We don't throw in anything that could smell of sheker. So Rav Sorotskin saying that's what that means. But to offer this as a potential reason behind the mitzvah, that's okay. Aval mekivan she'ayin panim laTorah. We have an idea that there are 70 faces to the Torah. There's different reasons. There's different explanations. Mutter lomar tamim shonim lamitzvah. You're allowed to offer speculative reasons behind the mitzvahs. Ubevad shelo lismach al tam ze bevados. As long as we don't say, I am certain that this is the reason, then it's okay. And there's an entire genre of svarim, of works, that do just that. Look at Sefer HaChinuch, look at Rambam and Mizmor Nevuchim. There are so many works out there that offer tamei mitzvahs, theories, speculations. What may have God wanted us to get out of this mitzvah? But what they're all saying is, and this is an important note, where Rav Sorotskin saying, whenever we engage in the business of ta'amei mitzvahs, offering a taste, a reason, a flavor for the mitzvahs, we're saying this is a theory. I can't say this is the reason. Only God can tell me what is the reason behind any mitzvah. But as long as I preface by saying, I speculate this might be something of what's behind it, then that's okay. And we find that our ancestors have done that often. There's a whole genre, as I said, of svarim called ta'amei mitzvos that offer reasons or theories, potential reasons behind the mitzvos. That's fine. What I'm not allowed to do is state with absolute certainty that this is the reason. And that's what Chazal were talking about in Maseches Brachos and Maseches Megillah, that in the course of one's davening, they shouldn't praise God by saying, God, you are so merciful that, you know how you're so merciful, you gave us the mitzvah of Shluach HaKain, because that's all about having mercy on the mother bird. That's like you're saying that with certainty, because I'm talking to God and I'm saying, that's how I know you're so merciful. That's praising God. And I can't say it that way, because there's more to it than that. It's a theory I might have, but when I'm talking to God in tefillah, there can't be any sheker. It has to be 100% emes. So that's what Chazal were saying. In my tefillos, I shouldn't insert such an expression. But in terms of learning and getting a better appreciation for mitzvahs, there's nothing wrong with that. And that's what Rav Sorotskin's suggesting here. This is a theory that I have that would help explain and could potentially answer an excellent question, is that, again, in so many areas of halacha, chayos and ophos, undomesticated animals, are grouped together with birds. Why is it here when it comes to mitzvah shluach haken? This is unique to birds. So for that, Rav Sorotskin has a beautiful idea, is that, again, when it comes to birds and how they treat their eggs, there's no other creature on God's green earth that acts in this fashion. If birds do it, means God has infused them with an extra level of rachmanos. Because they have that extra level of rachmanos, it would be so much greater, so much more devastating to see to watch that child the offspring being taken from them. I will say there is this idea in the Torah as well of osov espino, which is, again, the Torah says that we're not supposed to slaughter the mother and its child on the same day. But again, there's no mitzvah there that says you're not allowed to take it from the mother. It doesn't. There's no shluach haken. It's not just you're not allowed to kill it. You're not allowed to take it. Not allowed to let the mother witness you taking it away. So that's unique to birds. I just have to share a personal story. Years ago, I was still single at the time, so I'm going to guess I was in the yeshiva. I was home visiting my parents. So this is probably about 30 years ago or so. So I went driving with my mom. It was growing up in Cleveland, just about 30 minutes, maybe even less, 20, 30 minutes outside of Cleveland. There was an Amish community. I think it was called New Berlin or Berlin, Ohio. And they every Monday and Thursday they would have these animal auctions, and this was a great source of entertainment for us as kids. My parents would take us off, and there was an Amish flea market there, and the Amish, this is a strong Amish community, so they can't travel too far because they're limited to their horses and buggies. So different vendors would set up this massive flea market to sell their goods there. It was really entertaining. And then the Amish, because they're such farmers, different farmers would come around and they'd be trading, they'd be selling stuff. It was fascinating. But there would also be an auction, and it would be in this big wooden barn house, and it was like tiered seating, like stadium seating on benches. And it wasn't just Amish that would be there. A lot of Amish would be there, but there would also be other farmers in the area, and they would auction off all sorts of stuff. But what was most interesting was the animals. And again, as kids, you could go to the zoo, but this was so different because you're looking at these animals really up close. You'd first walk through the barn. There was like a walkway on top, so you get a good look at the animals, and then they would bring them in, and they would auction them off. And I remember when we were first married, I took Layla there once too, and I told her, I said, whatever you do, just don't raise your hand. Don't raise your hand. Keep your hands at your side. All you need is you raise your hand at the wrong time. You're gonna come home with a sheep. So I remember going with my mom. I was still single, and I remember we were sitting in the stands and it was just so entertaining watching these animal auctions. And but there's one item I'll never get out of my memory. And it just hit me is that, we sometimes go overboard because we're used to all these Disney movies and all these TV shows that make us think that animals are just like people, but they just, they look different and they have a different diet than we do. But you'll see all these Disney programs and whatever it is that they'll have speaking animals, and they really could get wrong ideas in our heads about what animals are. That they're thinking creatures and stuff, but really they're just thinking about where their next meal is coming from and how they can propagate. That's really what animals are thinking about. And if you ever want to be reminded of that, just watch the way farmers treat animals. They're not being cruel to them, but they clearly realize what animals are. They have a very utilitarian purpose. If they're sheep, they're raising them to, grow wool, and then they're going to slaughter them at a certain point. But there's no feelings of love and compassion. They're not treating them like pets. It's a utilitarian item. So I remember we're sitting there in the crowd, and they were going to auction off. It was a young calf, but the young calf was right by its mom, right by its mother. And the way this auction worked was that there was this massive, heavy sliding wooden door, and they would open the door and pull out the next animal and then bring it out into the auction ring. And then there was an Amish guy in there who would kind of like poke it at it with a stick to get it to walk around so everyone could see it from all the different angles. And then there would the announcer would start auctioning it off, ebony, 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 who, ebony, ebony. That was what was going on. And different people would raise their hands and fine. So we're sitting there and we're watching this one animal after the next. And then the next animal that they were going to bring out was a young calf. And the young calf was right by its mother because you could see it was clinging to it. And all of a sudden, they opened that massive sliding barn door to bring out this calf. And one of the Amish farmers there, grabs the calf, and they were really kind of roughhousing them. But again, they weren't treating them like pets. They were treating them like, utilitarian items. So this one Amish farmer grabbed the calf and started shoving it to go out. And you could see this calf did not want to leave its mother's side, and it kept running back to the mother. So he kept shoving it to push it out. And then the mother started following. So a different Amish guy starts pushing the mother back. And you could see they were trying to separate the mother and calf. And both of them clearly had feelings for each other. They did not want to separate. And finally, he was successful at pushing the calf out. And then he was quickly trying to slide the barn door shut, so to keep the mother from running out. But the mother ran forward and stuck out its neck right at that moment that they were sliding the door shut, and it slammed it right on the neck. But it's a big, strong beast. If it was a human, that would have done some massive damage. So it just, let out a big woo. And then so they opened the door just a little bit. He shoved the mother's head back in and then closed it. So there was just the calf out there. And I remember me and my mother just looked at ourselves, looked at one another, and we were like horrified because again, like we were thinking Bambi, we were thinking, all the Disney movies and everything like that. The farmers didn't flinch. Everybody else around us who was, putting up bids and auctioning, nobody flinched because again, their perception of animals and the role that they play in this world was completely different than us. We were looking at it as a pet, or something in the zoo, something from a Dumbo movie. That was how we were looking at it, but it was completely different than the animals. But what I did get out of there is that anyone who wants to tell you that there's no parent-child, mother-child instincts that animals have towards one another, they're lying. Of course there are. And that's where that old expression, that mama bear, comes out. That's a natural feeling. God has put that into mothers of all creatures out there, that they will protect their young, they will protect their offspring. That's something that God has put there. And that's what ensures that the next generation is going to survive and thrive. They'll help them raise to become independent, and then they take off on their own. I don't know if they're still having that feeling, that mother-child feeling towards them once they're already a couple of years old. Once they're independent, they seem to be on their way. But when they're still young like that, there clearly is this mother-child bond that's there, and that's that mama bear feeling. But what Sorotskin's pointing out is that as strong as that is in all creatures, it's even more powerful when it comes to birds. And what he pointed out again is, I thought, a beautiful observation. All those other creatures, you might be able to explain why there is mother-child feelings, fondness towards one another, because the mother could look at it and see a miniature version of herself. She's a miniature version of that species. A bird is completely different. They're looking at this egg. This egg doesn't resemble a bird. It's just a hard egg. That doesn't. It's not furry. It's not fuzzy. It's not soft. And yet the mother still is nurturing that, even even though it doesn't look like her. And then not only is she nurturing it, she's sitting on it, sharing her body warmth with it for so long. That's something that's just incredibly unique. And why did God do it? Because that's the only way that they would care about that. So he had to have infused an extra degree of love into that bird. So now it makes sense why the mitzvah of Shluach HaKain is there where it doesn't exist by Chayas or anything else. Because there's an extra level of God had to insert into the mother to nurture and to take care of that young one, it would be even so devastating if we were to take it away in front of it. And that's why the mitzvah of Shluach HaKain was given dafka specifically to birds. I thought that's a beautiful idea. What a beautiful explanation. Again, I didn't see that till this year when I was looking at some sources on the Parsha. And when I saw that, I said, I just really want to share that with you. So again, I think that's a beautiful idea, a beautiful observation. But the second point of Rav Sorotskin is also important because that really reminds us about this whole enterprise of engaging in offering speculative theories behind the mitzvos, tamei mitzvos, and it's something that we need to remember. No time, whenever we learn Sefer HaChinuch or the Rambam and his Mor Nevuchim, and he offers reasons for the mitzvos, or something like this piece from Rav Sorotskin, no one is so bold as to say this is the reason. Only God could say this is the reason. We can't. We're not divine. We're human beings. We could say based on my human understanding of Torah and all my other learning that I've done, here's a speculation that I have, and I think it might fit like a glove. But it's a speculation, it's a theory, and that's what we have to remember. None of us are so bold as to say this is the reason. Saying it in davening, and that's what the Gemara was saying, and the Mishnah was saying in Brachos and Megillah, to say in davening, Homer al kansi pur yagiu rachamecha, that if you're saying about God, God, you are so merciful that you even showed mercy to the mother through of the birds through the mitzvah of Shluach HaKain. Now you're saying with certainty what's behind it. That would be considered like dover shkarim, saying falsehood. And then when it comes to prayer, we want to be nothing but emes. So I thought there's so many parts of this that are beautiful. I wanted to share that with you today, and I hope this was something that could be enhancing for your understanding of the parsha, and I hope it's something that you'll find that you found meaningful. At this point, I'm going to end the recording, and if there's anything that